A man posted on TikTok. He was venting his frustrations with increased COVID cases of the unvaccinated. Take a listen.
Hey folks, how you doing? I just got a quick question about this whole COVID, not getting vaccinated and running to the fucking hospital once you get the virus fucking deal, because this shit is out of fucking control, all right? And I'm gonna give you a quick story on why I think it's out of fucking control. Last week I had to bring my wife into the hospital. She has stage 4 breast cancer. She was dealing with some symptoms, and I had to bring her in to get some fluid drained. She was having some pain, blah, blah, blah. She was in there for 2 days. On the 3rd day, she honestly should have stayed one more day, maybe 2 more days, okay? But on the 3rd day, instead of draining her fluid and what they wanted to do, they told us that she had to be discharged because they had no room left in the hospital because of COVID. Here's my question. Why 99% of everybody that's in the hospital with COVID right now is unvaccinated, okay? If you really fucking believe that COVID's not real, and you really believe that's not a big deal, and you really believe that you don't need to get the vaccine, that is your fucking right, okay? I'm not gonna argue with you about that. What I am gonna argue with about is you running to the fucking hospital once you get the virus. If you don't trust the medical field to prevent you from getting it, why do you trust them to cure you from it? Why do you run to the fucking hospital? If you really believe that COVID's not a big deal and it's not this, that, the other, and you don't get the vaccine because stick to your fucking guns and keep your motherfucking ass at home. Stop running to the hospital, putting everybody else at fucking risk, and in turn, the collateral damages. People like my wife who actually need medical fucking help for a chronic fucking disease get kicked out of the hospital because your dumb ass is too stupid to go get a fucking vaccine shot. Keep your ass at home. If you really believe COVID's not a big deal, prove it. Stick to your fucking guns, keep your ass at home, and fucking deal with it.
Well, there we go. He says, stay at home if you are sick. People are flooding the hospital. He had a sick wife, and because of those folks who are unvaccinated, they are flooding the hospital. Let's bring Dr. Daphne. Again, thank you so much for being with us. First off, I want to get your reaction. A lot of people may be feeling the same way. We know the uptick in cases is promoting more mask mandates as we continue to move forward. Now, the mask mandates here are many states. No cities are moving forward towards requiring vaccination confirmation. So, Dr. Daphne, if you wouldn't mind just kind of giving it, what is it like being number one on the front lines and the reaction that a lot of people are seeing with the mask mandates? They want to wear them or they don't want to wear them?
Yeah. So I live and work in Long Island, a suburb outside of New York City, and I responded to the initial surge of the COVID-19 outbreak last spring. And I did both hospital rounds as well as outpatient care for COVID-19 patients. And as the pandemic has evolved and we've gotten smarter with technology, I can now make a diagnosis right here in my office with rapid testing, as opposed to having to say, you know, based on this combination of symptoms, I suspect you have COVID-19, and then trying to make a decision about, does this person need to go to the hospital immediately? Should we watch and wait because of the bed crisis we had back then? Fortunately, I live and work in a state that is highly vaccinated, and so we are seeing a significant difference in terms of the number of cases and hospitalizations we're seeing from COVID-19 versus a state like Florida or Louisiana or Arkansas or places in Texas where their hospitals are at 75, 85, 90% capacity. and where their ICUs are again being maxed out, like in Tennessee, because there's a significant hesitation to get vaccinated. So we're in those states where less than 30% of people or less than 50% of people are fully vaccinated, they are back in the same crisis mode we were in November before we had a vaccine available, or where we were in spring of 2020 when we were really at the height of the onset of the pandemic. And I have to say, I totally feel that man's pain. I feel his pain as a breast cancer survivor myself, as someone who is close and connected to people who are immunocompromised or immunosuppressed or chronically ill and need access to their doctors and other healthcare professionals. And that we should not be in a position when we have 3 vaccine candidates available to us, where any person in this country can simply go and present themselves in any location, a hospital, a healthcare setting, a doctor's office, a pharmacy, a grocery store, Walmart, for God's sake. You can get a vaccine anywhere. There is no need for this, and I understand his frustration, and I totally understand why he cursed and dropped F-bomb after F-bomb, because there is no eloquent way to put it. What we are dealing with is ridiculous. And even as a healthcare professional, someone who has given their life and given their all to taking care of other people and ensuring the health and well-being of people, I'm quite frustrated. And I sort of, in my own personal life, not in my stethoscope, not in my office, but Alexia feels like, if you don't wear a mask, if you don't want to get vaccinated, you want to run out and be at bars and restaurants and do high-risk things without regards to everybody else's health and well-being, you shouldn't come to a hospital expecting everybody to drop everything, push everyone else to the side, and save you. Dr. Gaffney, triple board certified infectious disease physician, understands that everybody doesn't get it. Everyone doesn't hold the same belief. And unfortunately, there are real health consequences to that. And so I gave an oath to take care of people and to meet their needs. But it is incredibly frustrating that we are where we are today.
Back to that Roland Unfiltered video in just one moment. Seek.com, we're partnering with them, of course. We appreciate their support right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Check out a couple of their products that you can take advantage of.
And you're watching us on Seek. What's going on? This Quavo Huncho. Right now, you in the Huncho's world. Please let the music play.
Enjoy the Seek.com video by using one of their virtual reality headsets. All you do is just pop your phone right here into the VR headset and enjoy the content. You can also take advantage of their 360-degree headphones. These headphones here come in a couple of colors, black and gold, but then also all gold. And so you can check these out. If you want to use our promo code to get a discount, it's RMVIP21, RMVIP21. Then, of course, a portion of the proceeds comes back to Roland Martin Unfiltered, which allows for us to fund the show. And so this is a black-owned company, and we certainly believe in supporting black-owned companies. Mary Spiel is the founder. And so, again, go to Seek.com and use the promo code RMVIP21. COVID has taught a lot of us a lot of things, and many people have come to the realization they really don't like their jobs. And it's not just not liking their job. What they really don't like is everything that goes with it, the long commute, also realizing how much time they're spending away from their families. In addition, they actually were spending a lot of their money, again, sitting in cars. Look at the amount of money they were spending on daycare. And so people have decided, you know what, I'm good. So while companies are saying, we need you to return to the office, an increasing number of Americans are saying, I'll pass. That's okay. I'm just going to go ahead and quit, which is causing many companies to now figure out how they're going to replace these employees. Joining us right now is Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach. Deborah, glad to have you on the show. This is something that, and I was telling folks this last year, I said, COVID is about to reveal a whole lot of stuff about this country. We learned people really understood the racial dynamics when it comes to health and who gets impacted. We begin to understand how many kids did not have broadband and computers and were not as sophisticated, if you will, with technology, and how there was a gap there between the haves and the have-nots. But on the work front, a lot of people really have started to reconsider their work life and its impact on their personal life.
Absolutely, Roland. Of course, always glad to be back and have some conversations on wealth and the welfare of our community. And I'll tell you, there are really like three forces, right? It's generational, it's social, it's the social contract. And, you know, for many people, they just simply, as you said, want to spend more time with their family. I think if anything, COVID has been an awakening for all of us, and just in terms of what we value. And if you think about the folks who've been on the front line, it's really those essential workers who, you know, what we saw was some of us were able to stay home and work virtually, whereas others who were essential had to put their lives at risk. And so I think, as you pointed out, COVID revealed a lot of inequalities, really, in you know, just the social framework of this country. And in a way, it has put the power back into people's hands. So for employers, it's opening up Pandora's box. So much of what they said about virtual workforce and what could and couldn't happen, what we see is people have been just as productive, and in fact, they haven't been in cars commuting, so they're spending more time with their families. And you know, what we're seeing in the Wealthy You community is that some people, because they can work virtually, they have multiple sources of income, and in some cases, 2 full-time jobs because they have the flexibility. So Roland, I think that COVID has really empowered people to say, hey, I'm going to take control of my life and my lifestyle.
I was having a debate with someone on this whole issue of unemployment benefits and COVID, and this person had said that, you know, these lazy ass folks need to go to work. And I said, stop. I said, do not call them lazy. And the reason I said don't call them lazy is because I said the problem is not that they're lazy. The problem is that if you're making more money on unemployment and you're making on the job, it's a problem with the damn job.
Well, not only the job, but if you think about the minimum wage and the fact that it has not kept up with inflation, it specifically when you look at hospitality, any industry where people are being paid in tips, it really revealed the fragility of their circumstance, right? So, you know, if I'm bringing home a couple of $1,000s in tips and now I'm no longer working, and so I'm not getting that, and my, you know, my income is so low, what it is showing is that to these industries is that they have got to be able to pay people a living wage through which they can afford to take care of their families, and also, you know, have the type of benefits so that with the type of health concerns everyone has, that they feel valued. Otherwise, they are going to look for opportunities elsewhere, and how could we blame them?
Also, I think, before I go to my panel with questions for you, also I think a lot of people, how should I put this here? It's very interesting to me, the people who, even with businesses, are somewhat timid of being aggressive in asking for support. Here's what I mean. I had a conversation today with an entrepreneur who said, you know, look, I got to create more revenue. And as we were talking about we were talking about the business that he has. I said, why are you not asking your customers, your fan base, to give more to your product? And I said, but it's how you do it. What platforms are you on? Are we on Patreon? I'm like, no, you need to be on Patreon and Cash App and PayPal and Venmo and Zelle. I said, it's not about how you are comfortable. It's about what the customer wants. I then begin to break down, okay, what are your expenses? Your expenses are this a month. That means that you need X number of people giving this to cover your expenses. You should be tracking that on a weekly and a daily basis. And it was like a light bulb went off, and it was like, yo, I mean, I wasn't even, thinking that way. Last year was a brother who was a DJ. We were talking, and he said, man, I'm kind of, I'm leery about, put my Cash App out there. I said, I'm sorry, you're a DJ. There are no parties. You're not working. I said, but you're on Instagram. Basically, you're providing pleasure to people. You're making them feel good. I said, you're not demanding they give to you. Just put just pin your Cash App. I said, we're now living in a world where consumers have no problem $1, $5, $10, $20, $50, $100. I said, you're not begging. And I think that's part of the problem, Deborah. A lot of people think, oh my God, that's begging. No, it's not. It's business. And so again, it's a different state of mind.
Yeah, Roland, I think what you brought up too is that this is the social sharing community that we're in. And if you look at crowdfunding, I mean, when we were building an app, I raised $30,000 really from friends and strangers who were just aligned to what the mission of the app was. And so I think for business owners in particular, what we've all had to do is really pivot in this economy and really think about what are the ways that we can deliver our services. Typically a lot of our revenue came from doing live events. Well, we had a live event planned in April when COVID hit, and so we pivoted virtually. And so what I would say to small business owners, self-employed people, what contractors, really begin to think about what are the ways that you can create, possibilities and all this volatility that we're having. Because I was listening to your last interview, and clearly we are headed for another, I won't say full shutdown, but things are not going back to normal. So what is important is that people remain as flexible as possible and as innovative as possible.
Well, I just think that what has happened is it has forced people to actually look at their life and their world in a much different way, and then begin to make some different choices. Any questions from the panel? Kelly, anything for Deborah?
Hi, Deborah. Just really quickly, regarding how things are shifting, especially in the job market, and what people are actually asking for up front is like, will you have a work from home option? Is there a hybrid model in your work style? What I'm finding is that there are some industries out there that are desperately needed, such as social work, some type of public health care, administrative roles in that regard, that need to have an office setting, because a case, rather, someone who needs a social worker can't come to your house. And it's hard to do something virtually when the main reason they need a caseworker in the first place is because of lack of internet services or what have you. So I guess my question is, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, but what do you think about that kind of dynamic? Meaning, do you think that will cause another chasm in the classes and in job descriptions in general? Meaning, will people be making less money if they do in-person jobs now, because it's almost a luxury to work from home?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because the truth is, if you look at those kinds of roles, social work, administrations, those are basically occupations in which Black women specifically over-index in. And
Yes.
so, and you find that their wages aren't as competitive. So, although typically if they're working for a government or a, you know, a local government, a federal government agency, the upside is that typically they have benefits, pension benefits and that sort of thing. So they're giving up higher salaries for what could be seen as some long-term reward. But to your point, I do think you're already seeing people exit those occupations because of now with the sort of risking their health that all of this entails. You're seeing nursing, you're seeing a lot of these, you're seeing a lot of exit from those roles specifically. So I think on the other side of that, the employers are going to have to be creative in order to retain workers in those different occupations. So you bring up a very good point.
Mustafa.
Deborah, it's good to see you. I love that color you got on.
Good to see you again. Matching that tie.
Yes, ma'am. In my family and in my circle of friends, from elders all the way down to teenagers, folks are getting much more engaged in investing and saying that I can actually make more money investing than I can in some of the previous jobs that I had. So have you seen that as also an area that's growing, and do you expect that it will continue to expand?
Well, you know what's exciting? I'm glad you bring that up. What's exciting is what these statistics are showing is that particularly millennials and younger Black folks are more involved in investing than ever before. They're learning how to invest because of the plethora of apps that we have available to us. Now, Cash App allows you to invest not only in stocks, but also in crypto. You have other apps like Stash. You see Robinhood just went public. And, you know, a lot of the whole premise of Robinhood was for, you know, the not wealthy to kind of gain in riches. So I think that is part of what is driving the interest and accessibility of investing. Now, in terms of actually, you know, using investing for, you know, to make an income, I think there's a difference between trading and investing. And I think that, you know, we just hit another market high today. And so as a result of that, what happens is people begin to think that it's easy. But, you know, what I would say to anyone listening is to really get a basic foundation in how the investment markets work and how to invest it, if you will. You give me a great opportunity to just talk about some of the work that we're seeing in the Wealthy You community. And by the way, if anyone listening to me would like to learn more, they can go to wealthyu.com. But what we're seeing in our community is that people's portfolios in some cases have doubled the kinds of returns. Just in the past year, we're seeing some of the members in our community, their portfolios are up 49%. We do see that it's not just in their retirement accounts either. People are also opening up not only the apps, but full-fledged brokerage accounts and really learning how to build portfolios. So I say it's a win-win-win overall. Win-win-win, seeing young people get involved in the markets, and also, you know, the people in our Wealthy Youth community, our youngest member is, if I'm not mistaken, 23, and our oldest is maybe 79. So it's intergenerational, if you will, and it's a good thing because I believe that's one of the reasons the wealth gap is so big, is because of the fact that not enough Black and brown folks are investing.
Robert.
Hi, Deborah. I work in the traditional education workspace, the traditional higher education market, and traditional higher education, of course, used to mean that we were standing in a classroom with a bunch of students. Then over the last year, we were forced to go online. Basically, a lot of faculty against their will, because the state basically shut us down and said you can't have students in the classroom. So now we're back to, at least for now, for the time being, we're back to the traditional model again. We do have college students in the classrooms again. But do you think, my question is, do you think as we move toward the future, the marketplace might be moving toward more of a hybrid model where you can switch traditional in-person, online, hybrid, easily in between? We're kind of struggling with that right now, especially, again, those people that work at very traditional universities, like mine. How do you see that the whole marketplace within online education working out?
Well, I do believe that particularly higher education has been toying with this hybrid model for years. I know that I built a curriculum for a university in Massachusetts about a decade ago, and that was all done, even though I proctored the first class, it was all done virtually. And I mean, if you think about you think about your traditional student coming out of high school, but I would submit to you, I don't know what the actual stats are, that a significant amount of the students in many college campuses are older employees retooling their skills. And in fact, think you'll see that trend continuing because I believe that AARP has done some studies just on what employees need to do to keep their skill set up to date, and it's really enhancing and updating their skill set, understanding not only technology, but I mean, I think you would agree that someone like me who got an MBA more than 10 years ago, that a lot of that information is obsolete. And so in order to just keep up with supply and demand, I see that hybrid modeling continuing. I do believe that, as a parent of 2 millennials, that college in-person experience is valuable. However, what I do believe the virtual experience will do is make college more accessible and hopefully less expensive for those who do not have the necessary incomes to afford it. So I believe it's my long way of saying that the trends certainly are all pointing towards a hybrid environment simply for universities because of all the bricks and mortars that you have to be able to continue to afford those facilities.
All right. Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach. Tell folks where they can find you.
They can come to wealthyu.com. And by the way, we have an amazing masterclass going on this Saturday all day. So just go to the wealthyu.com website and you can learn all about how we're helping people build their first investment portfolios to 7 figures and beyond.
All right. Deborah Owens, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland.
Back to that Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Yo, this is Ziggy Marley. Catch my live performance on Seek.
Bon Jovi, and you're watching us on Seek. What's going on? This Quavo Huncho. Right now, you in the Huncho's world.
Please let the music play.
Of course, a couple of the products from the folks at Seek. They have their, of course, their great headsets. They're a 360-degree audio sound. You can see the This is, of course, the box right here. You can get the headphones in black and gold. Mustafa, that's a great color, of course. Us alphas, we love that. And they also have the headset in all gold. And so, again, you can get this. This is a black-owned company. Mary Spio is the founder of the product. They also have, of course, their virtual headset. And so, let me grab that right here. This is their VR headset where you can actually place your phone inside of the headset, and you can check out their virtual reality content at seek.com. Use the promo code RMVIP21, RMVIP21. The proceeds of what you purchase comes back to support Roland Martin Unfiltered. Y'all know what we do on this show. We support black-owned businesses, and that's what we are about. So go to seek.com, use the promo code RMVIP21. Y'all know what time it is.
No charcoal grills are allowed.
I'm white. I got you, Pearl.
Illegally selling water without a permit
On my property.
Whoa! Hey!
You don't live here.
I'm uncomfortable.
So there are a whole bunch of crazy, deranged white conservatives in America who are losing their minds over mask mandates. Oh my God, they just can't tolerate these things. Well, in Franklin, Tennessee, which is the richest city in Tennessee, last night there was a school board meeting. And there were doctors that testified, medical doctors that testified at the school board meeting about a mask mandate. Watch these yahoos after the meeting. But the credit of the person.
Everybody's taking notes, buddy. Keep that little smug. Yeah.
What kind job you boys do protecting us? Really, I'll keep you aside. Put it back on. Put your mask on.
Kids sucking that bacteria. How you like that? We know who you are. We know who you are.
Keep it calm.
No more masks.
Keep it calm. Keep it calm.
No more masks.
We're on these guys' side. They're on our side.
No, they're not. They're not on our side.
The police are on our side. The police are on our side. Let's calm down.
Yes.
Calm down. We know who you are. We know who you are. You can leave freely, but we will find you, and we know who you are.
You'll never be allowed in public again. You will never be allowed. You'll never let us be allowed in public again.
Hey, sir. I know who you are. Let him out. Let's let him out. Let him out.
You better watch out. You better watch out.
Keep it.
You better watch out.
Keep it calm. Everybody back up. Please. Everybody back up. Back up. Back up. I'm back, man. I'm on your side.
Back up.
I'm a parent.
Give me a lane. Peace.
You're good. Peace. Let him in peace. Peace. Be easy. Everyone. Peace. Peace. Peace, but we know who you are. You know who you
Fuck you. Folks, did you see that? That was a reporter for the Tennessean. Her name was Allison. She posted that video. We'll get her full name in a second. Natalie Allison. Do you hear them saying there, Georgia, we know who you are? We're coming after you? I mean, they were, and I'm trying to understand. You got cops standing right there. Those are threats being made.
Yeah, and I feel like if that would have been a crowd full of Black parents or Black people, there definitely would have been some arrests made due to those threats and the aggression that was shown, the way that these individuals swarmed in front of this doctor's car. And, you know, to me, it just makes me wonder, you know, what is it about wearing a mask that make these people this angry? And on the other side of that, I'm absolutely terrified for parents who have children under 12, as we are seeing employers now requiring parents to go back to work. That means that little ones are going to be back in daycares, they're going to be in preschool, they're going to be in kindergarten, first grade classrooms. And so what's going to happen then when you have groups of small children who are not vaccinated and potentially are exposed to the virus? I mean, we, I think, are starting to see the ingredients for a huge disaster. And not only do we have to try to mitigate the exposure that our children are going to be at risk of going back into the classrooms and going into daycares as parents go back to work, but now we have to figure out not only how to combat the virus, but how to combat white supremacy, Karenism, et cetera. So we're fighting a lot here, and you know, it's just unfortunate that we can't count on the law enforcement who were clearly there to do their job and enforce the law.
I mean, that is beyond sick, Monique, and apparently they were there at the behest of this idiot right here, Clay Travis of Fox News. He was one of the, matter of fact, I'm going to play this video. This is this idiot, Clay Travis, again, Outkick, Fox News, a white male conservative. This is the guy who Jason Whitlock partnered with when he left Fox Sports. That gives you an indication how trash Jason Whitlock is. But this took place, and it was Travis who ginned this all up. I called him an asshole on Twitter. I have no problem saying it again, because this is what happens when you're trying to become the next Rush Limbaugh.
Good evening. I'm Clay Travis. I have 2 kids in Williamson County Public Schools, 5th grader and a 1st grader, and you all should be ashamed of the choices that you are about to make. We teach our kids that facts matter. That's why they go to school. The facts are these: masks don't work. There isn't a single scientific data that has ever proven that masks work. Also, let's talk about risk analysis, which is the key. I feel bad for all these people walking around in masks, engaging in cosmetic theater, thinking that they are making a difference against COVID. They aren't. Here's the truth. Our kids, under 25-year-old, 1 in a million chance that they are going to die of COVID. They are more likely to be struck by lightning. They are more likely to be struck by lightning. They are more likely to die of the seasonal flu. Have any of you ever mandated masks for the seasonal flu? Well, shame on you, because every kid in Williamson County schools has been under more danger from the seasonal flu every year than they are for COVID. I would tell every parent here, don't let your kids wear masks.
So all those idiots, 1 in a million. I bet not one of them want their kid to be that 1 in a million, Monique.
Right. So, and that was the only thing he said that was accurate. All of the rest of it about the fact that masks don't work, that's not true. That you aren't safer wearing them than not, that's not true. That children, really, we're looking at the numbers of pediatric cases, pediatric hospital cases now spiking. And so that's like saying, because they're not going to die from it, we're good with them having it. What rational parent, what parent who's actually thinking about the welfare of their family member thinks along those terms. My children would not die of measles, mumps, or rubella, but that doesn't mean that I want them to have it just because the chances are slim that they would die from it. It's all absurd. But what strikes me more so than that is the whims of the crowd, the way that our citizens can be manipulated, that our country really is just a few Jim Joneses away from being a dictatorship where everyone is following not their own interests, but the interests of another, and they are sacrificing their own well-being, their lives, their finances, their education, their stability, their health, all for the sake of a dear leader. And for anyone who thought that that could not happen in this country because of the way that we were founded, you need to wake up and pay attention and see that it is happening. Are they the minority? Yes, but the numbers are large enough that we all should be more than concerned.
Well, here's the thing that's a trip, Robert. So this idiot, Clay Travis, posted this. These are the people who couldn't get into the meeting. Watch this. I sure hope none of those rich white folks in Franklin, Tennessee, have to bury their children because of their sheer stupidity.
You see, Roland, this is a perfect Glock 43 situation. That's going to be your subcompact. That's going to be something smaller than, you know, a Glock 19 or a Glock 17 that you can fit in for concealed carry. So you can either have it in an abdomen holster, or you can even have it in a small handbag or purse for a situation like this. Now, can I implore people, do not get an extended clip or extended magazine for a subcompact pistol, because then with a 30-round magazine that's bigger than the pistol itself. Just train enough where you know how to do a proper switch of your magazine, so if you need to reload, you can do it in an expeditious period of time. But when people start, I
don't know what the hell you talking about. But go ahead.
You're gonna need to.
I have no idea what the hell you talking about.
Look, Roland. If your car gets surrounded by a bunch of crazy MAGA saying that we know where you're at and what you're gonna do and how they're gonna get you, get yourself a nice Glock 43 to keep yourself safe. But those folks are crazy.
All we doing is hitting the gas pedal. Go ahead.
Well, I think.
Hold on, I'm just saying, surround my big ass Navigator. Okay, trust me. I'm gonna put a Lincoln imprint in the middle of your chest. Go ahead.
Well, look, we're dealing with a group of people who are disconnected from reality. When he says masks don't work, remember earlier this year when we had a mask mandate and then we got rid of it presumptively because we thought everybody was going to get vaccinated? What happened the minute we got rid of the mask mandate? All of a sudden you got 100,000 people a day being infected with COVID. That's the empirical evidence that you need. These people are completely separated from reality. They see this as a cultural war issue. They see this as an oppressive tyranny, Marxist state trying to take their liberty away from them. This is all they have left to fight for. So we are in a very tenuous period of time where these folks will storm the Capitol. They will storm school board meetings over CRT that they don't understand. They'll storm the schools over mask mandates just because somebody doesn't want to. Even the kid isn't going to die from COVID. He might infect the janitor or the school resource worker or the lunch lady or an administrator or someone along those lines, or he might catch it at school and bring it back home and kill grandma. So these people are disconnected from every bit of reality or objective fact. And we have to make sure we are prepared as a community in case these folks get another January 6th in mind now on a national level.
I'm telling you, I'm just looking at these crazies here, and that's what they are. And I am happy to see Georgia. I am happy to see school districts. The Houston Independent School District, the Dallas Independent School District, the Austin Independent School District, Broward County in Florida. I'm happy to see these school districts telling Governor Greg Abbott of Texas and Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida to go to hell when it comes to them and their mask mandates. They're saying, no, we're going to require it and take your executive order and shove it.
Yeah, I think it's the smartest thing to do in order to keep our children safe. And we know, historically speaking, just because something is legal doesn't mean that it's right. And so even though we can't count on some of our governors and mayors to do the right thing, parents need to lean into the fact that they have a choice. They have a choice to homeschool. They have a choice to request distance learning, but also a choice to speak out. And so I am glad to hear some people speaking up against this crazy rhetoric that it looks like so many people are getting behind. And what it tells me is that white privilege is important to so many white Americans, and this to me is white privilege, not at its finest, but definitely on full display.
I'm telling you, Monique, these folk here, and so now they've shifted from critical race theory now to no mask, fight it. I mean, you got folks like Texas Congressman Dan Crenshaw and Senator Rand Paul telling people resist, fight. I'm like, these people, I mean, I'm talking about just absolutely out of their minds, absolutely out of their minds.
Right, and they were always there. It's just that they were drowned out by the noise of rational thinking people. Trump brought the fringe to the main stage. And so now in that space that has been created, we see all of the Clays of the world and, you know, the Tuckers of the world and whoever battling for the control of the vapid headspace of millions of Americans who really will eat sand and think that it is water.
Yeah, and see the thing, and the thing, Robert, these people are so dumb and gullible. They don't even realize that people like Clay Travis, all they're doing is trying to build their name off of their sheer ignorance. I mean, that's the other deal.
Oh, and then just think about it logically also. If you're working for Fox as a journalist, you're vaccinated. They sent out an email a couple of weeks ago. You got to be vaccinated.
Hold up, not just vaccinated. They have not been in the facility. That's why when you watch these shows in the 5 boxes, because they ain't on set.
And then if you are in studio, you have to wear a mask the entire time you're inside. So while you're going to these poor rural communities, telling them to fight back against these oppressive mask mandates, when you're doing your job and getting your paycheck, they are ensuring they are following every health and safety protocol, and you are completely inoculated. It's the worst case of demagoguery that I think we see often. About a month ago, Tucker Carlson did a commentary where he said if you see a child wearing a mask, that's child abuse, call the authorities on them. And you heard at the beginning of that clip, somebody said, well, if a child has to wear a mask, that's child abuse. They are repeating these messages they hear in conservative media. They've been completely bought and sold into these conspiratorial ideas. They believe that the vaccine gives you microchips. They believe that the mask are a sign of totalitarianism. They believe that critical race theory teaching kids to hate white people. These are a very dangerous group, and we have to work on counter messaging them to hopefully bring some of them back to reality, but we just need to be prepared for the remainder.
Crazy and deranged.
Back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Seek.com, we're partnering with them, of course. We appreciate their support right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Check out a couple of their products that you can take advantage of.
You're watching us on Seek. What's going on? This Quavo Huncho. Right now you in the Huncho's world.
Please let the music play.
Enjoy the Seek.com video by using one of their virtual reality headsets. All you do is just pop your phone right here into the VR headset and enjoy the content. You can also take advantage of their 360-degree headphones. These headphones here come in a couple of colors, black and gold, but then also all gold. And so you can check these out. If you want to use our promo code to get a discount, it's RMVIP21, RMVIP21. Then, of course, a portion of the proceeds comes back to Roland Martin Unfiltered, which allows for us to fund the show. And so this is a Black-owned company, and we certainly believe in supporting Black-owned companies. Barry Spiel is the founder. And so, again, go to Seek.com and use the promo code RMVIP21. Let's go to Louisiana, where the Louisiana community is demanding the firing of an elementary school teacher over a derogatory Facebook post. Julie Colley is a tutor and the in-school suspension facilitator at a predominantly Black elementary school in Lafayette, Louisiana. Well, Colley used a racial slur in her comment on a post promoting a back-to-school giveaway on the city's north side. In response to the event's scheduled time, Colley commented, "I'm not going at 6:30. Cameron Street, that's Niggerville after dark, LOL." Lafayette Parish School System released the following statement. They said LPSS is aware of the situation and is conducting a thorough investigation into the matter. Because this is a personnel issue, no further information will be shared. First of all, they call it a personal issue, but it should be personnel. Because it's not personal, your public school system. Joining us is the chairperson of the Louisiana NAACP Political Action Committee, Norika Ross. Ms. Ross, how you doing?
Hello, I'm blessed and highly favored.
So I'm just trying to understand how long should this investigation be? Did she write the post? Did she call it Niggerville? This is not that hard.
She needs to be removed expeditiously for several reasons. One being, this is a different era. So the era in which she was raised is completely different from the era of us millennials. And with that being said, social media plays a huge part in our lives. And with that being said, we don't know how many kids or how many students may have seen that slur, Niggerville. I mean, that's absurd.
And so and the thing is, first of all, when did this happen?
Well, actually, it transpired over the weekend.
So it took place over the weekend. Today is Wednesday, and they're saying, "Oh, we need more time for a thorough investigation." Is the post still up? Did she delete it?
Well, I heard rumors that she claimed her account was hacked, or then I heard another rumor that one of her relatives utilized her device and made that comment, and that. Honestly, that's something you would anticipate someone to say, either their account being hacked or a supposed relative, you know, that's a typical lie.
Well, and again, that's always the, "Oh, I've been hacked." Oh, so that's the only comment they made. So if they hack you, they made no other post anywhere else, just this particular one here.
Exactly. And out of all the people in the United States, they choose this individual, and they also choose that individual to make a racial slur on a post in regards to our community. Yeah.
What have you been hearing from parents?
Well, honestly, as a Black mom, as a mother with 2 African-American kids, honestly, I would not want to bring my kid to that school until that teacher was removed and they do a thorough investigation to see if there's any other like-minded individuals who have poisoned the minds of our most vulnerable, which is our youth and our African-American youth at that.
Well, we certainly be watching and see what happens here. It's inexplicable that this just sort of happened, and then it was just sort of happenstance. And so let us certainly let know what happens in the future.
Absolutely, and the superintendent, Ms. Irma Trosclair, needs to do her part.
Okay. All right. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Have a blessed one.
All right.
Back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Seek.com. We are partnering with them, of course. We appreciate their support right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Check out a couple of their products that you can take advantage of.
And you're watching us on Seek. What's going on in this Quavo Huncho? Right now you in the Huncho's world.
Please let the music play.
enjoy the Seek.com video by using one of their virtual reality headsets, all you do is just pop your phone right here into the VR headset and enjoy the content. You can also take advantage of their 360-degree headphones. These headphones here come in a couple of colors, black and gold, but then also all gold. And so you can check these out. If you want to use our promo code to get a discount, it's RMVIP21, RMVIP21. Then, of course, a portion of the proceeds comes back to Roland Martin Unfiltered, which allows for us to fund the show. And so this is a black-owned company, and we certainly believe in supporting black-owned companies. Mary Spiel is the founder. And so, again, go to Seek.com and use the promo code RMVIP21.
Because we're finding out that there's continued to be some issues in Atlanta where a black mother claims her child's schools segregate classes based on race. Now, Kyla Posey, who filed a federal complaint against Mary Lynn Elementary School, Posey said that she was stunned to find out that the principal, Sharon Briscoe, who is also black, placed her daughter in an all-black class. Posey insisted that her child be placed in a class with white students, but Briscoe said the second grader would be isolated. A recorded conversation between Posey and an assistant principal confirmed separating the student by race was in fact Briscoe's idea. Now, this is a violation of Title IV of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Atlanta Public Schools conducted a review of the allegations and found appropriate actions were taken, quote unquote. But Posey was not satisfied and filed a complaint with the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights. Posey wants the principal and her administration removed from the school. I want to go to our panel, Reese Colbert of Black Women Views, Dr. Greg Carr, Chair of the Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University, and Amisha Cross, political analyst and Democratic strategist. Panel, this situation down in Georgia, black class. All right, I'm gonna throw this into you, Doc, because I feel like you might get us off on an interesting start. This mother was upset that her daughter was placed into an all-black class.
Yeah. Okay, I'm holding my tongue. Number one, I don't know enough about this to speak intelligently about the specific circumstances. The questions I would want answered is, if she is not funding this federal court challenge, who is?
Okay.
That's what I would need to know, because if you know the Harvard case, where the Massachusetts State Court said that Harvard's affirmative action policies could remain in place, Robert Mercer and others, and some of the same Klan crowd that funded the Sarah Fisher's challenge that made it to the Supreme Court, are backing them. And it's now in federal court. If it can get to the Klan majority on the Supreme Court, they're looking to dead out affirmative action. But they did not use white people. They used, the argument that they're advocating for a point of entry that began with Asians who had higher test scores and higher scores. So in this situation, I hope that this is something similar, because if this is as simple as a black parent who I'm afraid may have picked the white doll if she had been given the Clark doll test that went into Brown versus Board in terms of which doll do you like the most, didn't understand that a black woman educator is attempting to help her young black her young black child perhaps see someone black in front of the room. Because remember, there were a number of teachers who said, why don't I have access to all the teachers? Maybe there are only 2 black teachers. I want to know the race of the teacher in the classroom, because typically in those classrooms, you don't have teachers who look like the students. So maybe there was a black teacher, a black woman or a black man. And at that age, you want to see that. I'm afraid what we have here is a situation of what, I don't even have a phrase for it, but maybe we can call it terminal integration. In other words, you think you're advocating for your child, but you've misunderstood the fundamental purpose of these laws, which was to create space for us to have access to resources and to continue to develop ourselves as human beings, not to be given access to white people. You may be doing your child more harm than good, but I don't know enough about the circumstances. I just hope that she's not being put out there by some people who do understand what this is about. which is what? Control over public education and making sure that you can never attack racism in this country in a way that addresses historical wrong, but you bring it forward in the words of John Roberts, the kind of Klan adjacent Supreme Court Chief Justice, that the way you get rid of discrimination based on race in this country is to get rid of discrimination based on race in this country. You know what they call colorblind constitutionalism. That's something you would see in critical race theory. But as Amisha said, they don't teach it outside of law schools. So I just hope that lady, I don't know.
Amisha, what's your take on this? Because even though the mom said that she wanted her daughter to be in a class with white students, and the principal was saying the second grader would be isolated. You just talked about the story of what you learned about racism as a girl in the first grade. I mean, does the principal have a case? Does the principal, making this decision saying, look, I think this is in your daughter's best interest to put in an all-black class? Excuse me, all-black class. I mean, is the principal wrong in making that decision?
I don't think that the principal is wrong in making the decision. I do think, again, as somebody who's worked in education at the K-12 level, that conversation should have happened with the parent before moving the child. And I say that because, to Dr. Carr's point, this could be one of two things. This could be a parent who just assumes that water tastes better or water is colder if it's on the white side, or this could be a parent who honestly feels like her child learns more in a diverse, and what she is assuming is a diverse classroom. I would have to know more backgrounding on the school itself. Is this a school that just has very few African Americans in general? What I do know is that schools across America have a whole lot of white teachers. Over 80% are white teachers. So for there to even be a black head of the classroom in the K-12 level is exceptionally rare. As someone who had only 2 black teachers in K-12, one of them was my own mama because I was homeschooled for a while. At the end of the day, I can say that it does make a difference having a black person lead the classroom, be it whether you're in an all-white classroom, which I was in outside of homeschooling. I was often the only white kid in my class, and trust and believe, I am in accordance with that principle. There is no way you don't notice it. There is no way that you aren't treated differently. And I think that that type of conversation needs to be had with that parent before moving that student. But I also think that we need to talk to black parents differently, because at the end of the day, there are a lot of black parents across this country who assume that if your kid is in a white class or your kid is in a class led by white people, that they are learning more than they are, or their education is going to be better than if they are in a classroom full of black kids. And I can say that that is flat out a lie. What we know is that there are significant resource differences between schools that house predominantly black kids and schools that house predominantly white kids. It is not an education deficit based on teaching. It is not an education deficit based on culture. It is a deficit based on the fact that we have a system that provides more funding, more assets to white schools, to suburban schools, than they do to African American schools or schools that are largely in African American communities. That is something we need to continue talking to parents about, and something that honestly we have to, as a nation, do more for, because our community schools are largely black and brown and not white, even though the leadership of them happens to be predominantly white women.
Back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Seek.com, we are partnering with them, of course. We appreciate their support right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Check out a couple of their products that you can take advantage of.
Bon Jovi, you're watching us on Seek. What's going on? This Quavo Huncho, but right now you in the Huncho's world.
Please let the music play.
Enjoy the Seek.com video by using one of their virtual reality headsets. All you do is just pop your phone right here into the VR headset and enjoy the content. You can also take advantage of their 360-degree headphones. These headphones here come in a couple of colors, black and gold, but then also all gold. And so you can check these out. If you want to use our promo code to get a discount, it's RMVIP21, RMVIP21. Then, of course, a portion of the proceeds comes back to Roland Martin Unfiltered, which allows for us to fund the show. And so this is a black-owned company, and we certainly believe in supporting black-owned companies. Mary Spiel is the founder. And so, again, go to Seek.com and use the promo code RMVIP21. these folks are saying, damn the children. They are ignoring all this data we keep seeing. They're ignoring the ICU cases. They're ignoring all of these things because they now want to make this thing out to be, oh, that's a personal. See, and now you want to see stupid? Boom! This literally just dropped 5 seconds ago from the Texas Tribune. Breaking: Texas Governor Greg Abbott is asking hospitals to delay certain elective procedures so space can be freed for COVID-19 patients. He still won't let local governments and schools require masks or vaccines. What an asshole.
That's a nice way of putting it, Roland. I mean, that man is a certified public idiot. And many people had to wait until, April, May, June of this year to get elective surgery. And now he's asking them to put it off again because his intellectually deficient behind can't figure out that masks are important, that vaccinations are important. He's playing Russian roulette with people's lives, and he's doing it for political gain. And somebody in the Republican Party, because we can say all we want as Democrats, they're not going to pay us any mind. Where are the Republicans with sense? That's what I want to know. Where are the Republicans who will call this governor out and say, look? And that clip you showed earlier, I mean, I'm glad that I was not on camera. I hope I wasn't, because I was about to roll on the floor. That stupid pastor who said, we got Jesus. No, you don't. You don't have a speck of Jesus in you. Because if you had Jesus, you would look at the Bible that says things like, love your fellow man. If you loved your fellow man, you'd have a vaccination, you put your darn mask on. I mean, he doesn't have Jesus. What he has is a microphone, and that's all.
I just don't get it. I don't get just this notion that these things are not happening on Congo. I mean, he don't do elective procedures to free the beds up, and you're telling districts no mask mandates. You're threatening school districts as well. You tell TEA don't inform parents of positive COVID tests. That is demonic. That's demonic, evil leadership.
He's killing people, plain and simple. And, you talk about that pastor talking about Jesus and God. Jesus and God, gave us the science that created the vaccine and the mask and all of these other types of things. So where do you draw the line? Look, going back to these schools and what Mr. Spar was talking about, look, the other part that he didn't talk about, and I know he knows about it, but just didn't mention it this time around, was that also the stay-at-home option is no longer there. So if parents are opting to stay home, they are on their own. They are not going to get the Zoom from the teachers as they did last time. So that's also not an option for parents in these public schools. And so DeSantis is going to take that money from the schools and give it to parents to send their kids to a private school where they have mask mandates, because as Mr. Spar said, there's no policy for the for the private and charter schools. This is idiotic, and I really feel for the parents who don't have the resources. And I'm with the other town or city that you mentioned earlier that said, hey, screw the governors, we are going to do these mask mandates. The parents, the people have to stand up to protect their children. My son is going into the 1st grade in a K-8 school. The staff is all vaccinated, but by science alone, the majority of the people in that school with kids are not going to be vaccinated. We got the mask mandates, all of the precautions are being met. And we also know that our public schools because they're not getting the financial resources, they are not being able to retrofit. They're not being able to do all of the things with the ventilation and all of that. So we're sending them into death traps, and they're going to be going home to their communities and spreading this at an even faster rate. Governors got to go, and the people need to stand up across the country to save our children and everybody that they might infect as well.
Mustafa, last point here. Go to my computer, please. This was from Associated Press. Breaking: Arkansas reports the largest number of COVID-19 hospitalizations in the state since the pandemic began. The state reported its COVID-19 hospitalizations rose by 103, its biggest one-day increase to 1,376.
So here's what we can do. And for some reason, folks haven't done it yet. I have expertise in climate law, but I know a little bit about criminal law as well. So there is child endangerment, there is public endangerment, and there is reckless endangerment. So these individuals who are making these decisions there are ramifications for those. And folks need to begin to call them to the mat, as folks would say, and actually take these folks to court. If you want them to stop this type of behavior, then we've got to utilize the courts. We have tried everything else. We've actually asked people's better angels to do the right thing. We've supplied the science. You know, we've given examples of how we can actually slow the virus and eventually stop the virus. None of these things are motivating these folks. So it's time to take them to court.
Back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. DaBaby has been in the news for the last couple of weeks over comments that he made at a concert. Now, at the particular concert last month, he made what has been called anti-gay remarks on stage at the Rolling Loud Musical Festival. Now, we're going to play these comments for you, just giving you a warning right now. They are crude, and so if you want to turn this audio down, you want to turn away, that's no problem. So we're going to give you time to do so. It has set off a torrent of criticism. He's been dropped from a number of festivals. It led to an apology from him, but then he repealed the apology. I'll explain all of that. This is what he said in concert.
You didn't show up today with HIV, AIDS, any of them deadly sexually transmitted diseases that'll make you die in 2-3 weeks. Put a cell phone light in the air. Lady, if your pussy smell like water, put a cell phone light in the air. Fellas, lights up. Fellas, if you ain't sucking nigga dick in the parking lot, put your cell phone lights in the air.
Let's be real about this shit.
Yeah, keep it fucking real.
Some of y'all niggas suspect as a motherfucker. Let's be real.
Now, DaBaby, after that, he doubled down and said that his gay followers understood what he was saying, that it was not a big deal. That did not sit well with a number of festival organizers. He was accused of spreading misinformation. Many consider it harmful with regards to HIV and AIDS. Now, this has prompted a variety of conversations with folks about this issue, including rappers and the issue of homophobia, but also HIV and AIDS. So it's been going back and forth, what's going on. So then DaBaby dropped a video on his Instagram page where he was talking about this whole issue of where he apologized for his comments. Well, over the weekend, he actually pulled that video. It was deleted. So it raises a lot of questions to deal with. And so it's been a lot of back and forth. Now, let me join right now by, first of all, there have been a number of people who've been trying to educate DaBaby. There were people who actually signed a letter saying that they would meet with him as well. Now, Jasmine Koenig, of course, we've had Jasmine on the show for many times. What was interesting is that Jasmine dropped a piece that I found to be quite interesting, and this is how she titled it. She titled it, DaBaby Outrage Illustrates Double Standard. So when you click her piece, what she lays out in this article are how people, I'm pulling it up right now to show you exactly what she wrote, and she said, a double standard is a rule of, so she goes on and talks about his lyrics. So she says in here, look how me and my little bitch be dressing. Ain't fucking her right, but you ain't pulling her hair. Yeah, bitch ass nigga. Oh, you asking for pictures with niggas. That's from one of his lyrics. Actually from one of his songs that have earned multiple nominations. Now, this is what Jasmine writes. Most people who knew of Charlotte rapper DaBaby were okay with him profiting off calling black men and women niggas and bitches. But once he talked about sucking dicks in the parking lot and dying from AIDS in 2 to 3 weeks, then he had to be canceled. He said that she writes, because of the continued stigmatization of HIV and AIDS among blacks, HIV and AIDS are still being used as a weapon. Now, so she goes on to write in here how folks are talking about, and this is what she writes, somehow as a black lesbian woman, I'm supposed to be more outraged over DaBaby's homophobic and anti-AIDS comments than I am about being called a bitch or a nigger. How does that work? The only conclusion that I could draw was that nobody cares when a black rapper is calling other black people niggers and bitches. It pays, and it pays well for so many people. But when that same black rapper says something offensive about gays, which by definition happens to include white gay people, that's when he must be canceled. For the record, white people in general, and specifically white gay people, aren't known for shutting down and canceling rappers who call black men and women niggers or bitches. They have pretty much always been okay with that by way of their silence. A double standard is a rule or principle which is unfairly applied in different ways to different people or groups. She says, Jasmine writes, I am black, I am a woman, and I am a lesbian, so this is no way a defense of DaBaby. He was making ignorant statements long before his latest inflammatory comments. But I really do want to know how we're choosing who to cancel and for what reason. This selective outrage is confusing and hypocritical. Why can DaBaby's concerts be canceled for his homophobic remarks and not for his misogynistic lyrics and use of the N-word? Is it because then 95% of today's rappers would also be canceled? Because, let's admit it, almost all of the successful rappers today got there using the words bitch, hoe, and nigga. Is it because the music industry and its connoisseurs have no problem with profiting off of the degradation of women, black women in particular, and the use of the N-word? That would never happen with anti-Semitic lyrics. In fact, it doesn't happen with any other type of hate speech. Because black people are okay with calling each other bitches, hoes, and niggas as long as we are. Everyone else, including us, is allowed to make a profit off of it. Unlike with other groups of people, be it the LGBTQ community, Jews, Asian Pacific Islanders, or any other race, we are the only people who are okay with self-degradation under the guise of replacing the letters ER with an A. And as far as bitches and hoes go, we call ourselves that too. In this politically correct Me Too woke world that we live in, that just doesn't seem like something that would be tolerated, let alone accepted. It's easy to hop aboard the hashtag cancel DaBaby train. All aboard. I need the same energy that's being used to punish DaBaby for his homophobic and anti-AIDS comments to be directed towards rappers like him who continue to call women bitches and hoes and use the N-word. Omakongo and Julian. Let's talk about this. So really what Jasmine is doing, Jasmine is challenging not just black people, she's also challenging gay folks to say, y'all quiet about that, but you're commenting on this. Why not both? And as she said, she's not defending DaBaby. She's saying, you want to cancel him for both, not just one.
You know, her piece is very thoughtful. It's a really good piece. And I think it's really important to challenge us, but also the industry. There it is, the industry. Remember Michael Jackson had some little lyric that was somewhat anti-Semitic?
They don't care about us.
Yeah, he said, it was, I think he said, Jew me, screw me, something along those lines.
Jew me, don't you black and blue me, kick me, don't you black or white me.
Yeah, and so that record had already been printed. They ordered the destruction of all of those records, and for to apologize. Yes.
So you know, basically, you could do that with another group of people. You could do it with black people. You couldn't do it with any other group of people. Even if you did some things. I mean, years ago when I did daily radio, one time I said Chris Columbus was a drunken Italian who got lost. You would have been stunned at the number of letters the station got saying, she can't say that. But it's true, the man did get lost. So somehow we're at the bottom of we Black people and women are at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to outrage. You know, you can say anything about us, and some of us will laugh, some of us will say right on, and many of us will go right through their heads, but it's not just about us. It's about an industry that profits from the degradation of Black people, about an industry that profits from, DaBaby has been a fool, from what I can tell, and I really am too old to follow that kind of mess, but it seems like he's been a fool from the word go. Only when he starts talking about homosexual sex does he suddenly become cancelable. If you were to cancel him, you should have canceled him some time ago. So I kudos to Jasmine for putting it out there like that, putting herself out there like that. I'm sure she's going to get both positive and negative feedback, but I think her piece was very good.
Congo.
Even beyond the industry, there's this mentality of do whatever you want in the Black community to yourselves, but you're going to stop when you come towards us. You can go back to the riots after Rodney King, right? As soon as it started moving out to the suburbs, oh, here's the National Guard. The list goes on and on, right? Look, when we come back to the industry, I did my doctorate on Jay-Z. I teach several hip-hop-related courses at American University. And the fact of the matter is, when she talked about white gay men being silent, I would argue that many of these guys are not silent. They're at the concert singing along with many of these lyrics. You know what I'm saying? I've seen them. We've all seen them if you've been to a hip hop concert. So she's absolutely right. There's this level of acceptance of y'all gonna do what you're gonna do. And we, you know, I'm a rapper myself, of course. And so, you know, we as artists do need to be more responsible, but we could be more responsible as we're calling out this hypocrisy as well, because we need to be past this day and age where we're putting out any of the derogatory lyrics towards any group, but especially our own community and culture. Because we never needed to do it in the first place. And we're successful enough now in the industry in terms of people running their own labels and the like to not have to do that and still get our message across. And so I applaud what Jasmine is doing, and we really need to take control of this music. Look, I'm raising daughters now, I'm raising sons. And look, at American University, yo, when these kids are coming into class singing this stuff and have no historical context, and we just got to start, and some of my Black students as well, the few that I have in there, they don't even have historical context. And I also teach a class called Global Hip Hop and Resistance. And so when you talk about an international word in terms of how this language has been populated across the world, like KRS once said, that mic you speak through goes from here to Mogadishu, and how you represent us is the issue. Yes, we do need to call ourselves out in the same way, but also call out the hypocrisy that Jasmine is mentioning. So kudos to Jasmine as well.
I want to bring in guest Rania Copeland. She is President and CEO, BLACX Institute. Carolyn White-Singer, Board President, San Francisco Pride, and Reverend Rob Knowles-Newton, Director of the National Program for the BLACX Institute. Glad to have all three of you here. So this conversation, first of all, there's several different things going on here. So DaBaby drops his video where he apologizes over the weekend. Now apparently deleted the video. There are a number of different groups that actually wrote him an open letter asking to sit down and educate him. And then now you have what Jasmine is saying here. Just want to get the three of you your thoughts on this issue. So you have the homophobic comments, you have the issue dealing with comments about HIV and AIDS, and then of course you have what the language that he uses that Jasmine says is targeting Black people. What do you make of the whole discussion?
Jasmine is absolutely correct. And what we talk about at BLACX Institute is how white supremacy and anti-Blackness really is the stem of oppression that is impeding our ability to respond to HIV and AIDS. You know, we specifically call out the misogynoir that we saw from DaBaby. I think that if you would have played the recording a couple seconds earlier, you hear him talking about Black women and calling us names, and that is something that, you know, they come together. But I completely understand and agree that there is this double standard where we think that it's more acceptable, but we know it's not. And at least when it comes to HIV, we talk about, and we have so much data that shows that this misogynoir that's specific towards Black women is part of the reason we see increased HIV cases amongst Black women. We see higher rates of intimate partner violence among Black women living with HIV. We see higher rates of homelessness among Black women living with HIV as well. And so this is is all because of and roots from this same anti-Blackness that we see from DaBaby in much of his music, and certainly most recently from his latest comments.
Rob?
Look, I'm a same gender-loving Black man who's been living with HIV for the last 16 plus years. So A, you don't die in 2 to 3 weeks. And I was surprised that his comments caused such an uproar, because I didn't expect it, because it hasn't before. Gay folks, women, we're all in the same gang when it comes to being disrespected by the hip hop industry. But I'd also say that we didn't call to cancel anybody. We called to engage and educate, and probably more important than educating DaBaby is educating the folks that listen to him, so that when he says stupid stuff, they don't believe it.
Carolyn.
Yeah, I want to echo what Reverend Rob said and really push back on this notion that DaBaby is just misinformed. DaBaby is not misinformed. DaBaby is playing out the misogynoir, the anti-Blackness, the homophobia that he has been taught for generations and for decades. We have seen this within our Black Black community at large. And you know what Reverend Rob said is correct, and I don't know which one of it was in my Facebook friends. You know, I've been having this conversation in these internet streets a lot, but one of them did also remark that 10 years ago, if a rapper had said these same things, he would not be getting the cancellation. But I think that there's a much deeper conversation to be had about where we are here in 2021, where we do have a DaBaby making these comments here, but a couple of weeks ago we had someone like Lil Nas X who literally had a video with naked Black men in it. That's something that went viral, but that was widely accepted. So we have to have these critical conversations about where we are and where we have seemingly progressed to, but are we having the conversation about the harm that has been felt by Black LGBTQ folks, and really also the fact that when you talk about, I'm not going to say white gays, I'm going to say non-Black gays, because non-Black and white gays all participate in this notion of Black rappers as this stereotype. They don't see the offense of talking about Black women in that way. And part of that is, I'll put that a lot on my generation. From the generation, I'm 42 years old, so I grew up listening to the Sugar Frees of the world, and a lot of folks, you know, talking this way about Black women and Black gays. But for people who are not us and not in our community, it's a little bit different. And there's an amazing writer named Ashley Marie Preston, who's a Black trans woman writer and media personality, who said, let Black LGBTQ folks deal with DaBaby, unless you are directly affected by the things that he said. And really, Black LGBTQ folks, the ones who are normally erased from these conversations, are the ones who are directly affected and should be dealing with him directly as such.
So, okay, so with that, there were a number of groups that actually wrote this open letter to DaBaby, and I've had a conversation with several African Americans who are involved in LGBTQ organizations, and so, all right, who reaches out? Who goes to him? I mean, I get the open letter part, but who's made the effort to say, hey, we want to sit down with you? Have any of you, have you heard from his camp? Are they willing to have a conversation?
We're working on it. We've been engaged with them. We were one of the folks who were in that open letter. I also want to be really clear that the majority of folks on that open letter were Black-led agencies, which we thought was really important, particularly organizations in the South where we see the majority of new HIV cases. And I think that this is, you know, there's been some engagement, but let me tell you, we haven't sat in a room with him yet. We haven't gotten a phone call. We haven't even put in a text message chain with him. So there's some work to be done. And I think that there is a lot of protection from his representation, from Universal Music Group that he's underneath, because I think they haven't done the work, that they allow this kind of misogynoir, this anti-Blackness, and they profit off of it. And so sitting him in a room with, you know, some of the nation's leading advocates to respond to HIV, I wish there was some more responsiveness. I wish we had a date on the books. At least there's some conversation back and forth, but I think that there is a huge systemic issue that these companies have around profiting off of anti-Blackness. And what does that mean, especially after last summer, where we believe that more people said Black Lives Matter than we ever heard before? And so we haven't seen it realized yet. We're hopeful that it will happen, but it's been slower progress than I would have hoped for.
So I'm confused here. So you just said that his record label is Universal?
Uh-huh.
Who owns Universal?
I'm not sure. You tell me, who owns Universal?
Isn't Universal owned by Comcast? Is it Universal? Is it Universal? So I'm curious. So if you haven't got on the phone with his team, what is the label saying?
We're waiting on him. We're waiting on him. We're getting back and forth. But yeah, we sent that letter last week, and we haven't heard anything definitive yet. We've been in conversation. We're trying to book something, but there's nothing that's been on the table yet. I would hope for a speedier response.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Especially around something that is so impactful in Black communities.
Yeah, Universal. Actually, Universal. All these people have gone through these sales. So, Universal Music Group is owned by the French media conglomerate Vivendi, with Chinese tech company Tencent owning a minority stake. Their headquarters in the Netherlands, as well as in Santa Monica, California. But the interesting thing is that their subsidiaries include Interscope, Republican Records. Let me just go ahead and read them: Cash Money Records, Universal Music Group, Mercury Records, Virgin Records. These are all of the folks who will go under the label and brand. Oh, let's see here. Actually, we go Capitol Music Group. We got Decca. Oh, Motown is underneath this as well. And so Universal Music Group Nashville, Universal Music Latin Entertainment, EMI, Capitol Music Group. So and this is the point that I think that what Jasmine was also making in her piece when we talk about language. I remember when I was on Paula Zahn's show years ago at CNN, before I actually officially joined them, and they had this whole hour dedicated to rap lyrics. And they wanted Russell Simmons on the show, 50 Cent. And finally I said, whoa. How in the hell are we having a conversation about the artists, but we ain't said a damn thing about the CEOs of these record labels? So from any of you, so what is the path forward? Sure, talking to him and his team is one thing. Who gonna call out his label? And who's going to say to the label, y'all got to stand up? And I guarantee you've got LGBTQ folks involved in this label who got them supporting many of their efforts. And this is, I think, what Jasmine is talking to. You got folks who are profiting off of Black artists, but now you want to say something, but you wasn't saying nothing before. So Reverend Carolyn, how do we have this conversation, not just in Black America, but in broad America? What do y'all care about?
Well, I think that there's, again, a lot of different ways to go with that particular question, because especially you mentioned how many people who were in the streets last year saying Black Lives Matter. And you have to recall that the murder of George Floyd happened, I believe, a week before June Pride Month kicked off. And so I remember, as the head of a Pride organization, I remember getting emails for days from, presumably, I'm going to assume, white gay men who thought that we were going to cancel Pride because now in 2021, because George Floyd has been killed, now they need to focus on Black people. So you have this issue where you have, again, I'll say non-Black, not just white, but non-Black people of color and white people who don't really focus so much on the issues affecting Black folks, including Black LGBTQ folks, including our Black trans community, including our Black folks who are affected by the HIV crisis, until someone literally tells them to do it. And so we can definitely focus on hitting them in the pockets. When you look at that list that you just gave, I mean, we think about Interscope, we think about Def Jam. So many of them have profited not just on language that have demeaned Black women, but have been profiting on artists who have demeaned Black LGBTQ focus for decades. So it's, how do we get together as a Black LGBTQ together with our Black straight community? That is very important, because one of the things that I saw a lot in again, the internet comment section, is you start to see that deep chasm between Black LGBTQ folks and Black straight folks who did not find any type of issue? How can we hit those companies in the pockets and force them to look at this issue if at the core of it, we're still so divided on it?
Reverend?
Look, I'm of the sense that we can separate morality and supply and demand. I grew up listening to Too Short basement tapes in my 8th grade language lab, but I can't listen to half the stuff I used to listen to 30, 40 years ago because I've matured. And so I think educating folks, helping them come to a new place, but supply and demand is going to let those record companies do whatever they do. My hope is that the record companies will put us out on tour with these problematic artists so that we can share accurate information about HIV.
So what's the next step? What is it?
I'm hoping that there is some resourcing work to do anti-Blackness work. Right, so we have Universal Music Group that is making all kinds of money off of not just DaBaby's misogynoir and anti-Blackness, but a whole lot of Black peoples and Black entertainers anti-Blackness. And I think it is unrealistic to expect that we are going to dismantle this internalized white supremacy that we have as Black communities and Black people from hundreds and hundreds of years of oppression and white supremacy that our country is steeped in. And so how can you resource these conversations that need to be had, not with white LGBTQ communities, but really within our Black community as a whole? And I think that we need to start holding these entities accountable that, you know, when we see misogynoir, we know that there are implications for our Black community overall, whether it's HIV and AIDS, whether it's heart disease or diabetes. These things show up, this anti-Blackness, it ends in sickness for our communities, and that there's work that we have to do. And I think that we need to hold these companies accountable and demand that these resources that they have, this money that they're getting, some portion of that has to be invested back in community so that we're able to take care of us and dismantle some of this head stuff that we have going on that is about thinking that our world is so binary and white.
Carolyn, what's next?
I agree as well, and I think that for those of us who create spaces, you know, I'm going to be very careful and not have anyone say I'm inviting DaBaby to San Francisco Pride, because that will go around the internet like wildfire. But you know, we are all about building spaces and having community. And you know, we have just as we have represented the Black AIDS Institute here. We have the East Bay Institute here in Oakland that would love to have these conversations, because it's really going to be about having genuine conversations. I think that's the thing that I personally fear, is that once we do get, you know, DaBaby in a room, you know, the same way that he put up an apology, which was more than likely not going to read it, and it was not written by him. The same way that he put up an apology and took it down, we'll be able to get into a genuine, authentic conversation with him and other, you know, rappers just like him. You know, the Rev mentioned Too Short. I grew up in Oakland listening to Too Short. How are we going to have a whole conversation about rising above and kind of changing the way that we and our children now are listening to these lyrics and educating each other so we can move forward as a unified community?
Rob?
I think that's the important part, is we need to educate each other, right? Our motto is our people, our problem, our solution. And so I don't depend on DaBaby to become an HIV expert and go out and teach all of his audiences, but I want an invitation to do some of that stuff. And I want his audiences to start paying attention to HIV, because the epidemic is not over. A lot of folks think that AIDS ended 30 years ago, and it's not over. The look of it has changed, and it looks like us.
All right. Well, certainly appreciate the three of you. Keep us updated on what happens if you have that conversation. And we certainly will be following this story to see what happens next. Thanks a lot.
Folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.
Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.
Census data report that was just released earlier today to talk about the implications of the data and what should we expect as folks are in the scramble to use that data to create new forms of political power. Now, joining us on our panel tonight is Reese Colbert, who serves as the founder of Black Women Views, Dr. Greg Carr, chair of the Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University, and Amisha Cross, who is a political analyst and Democratic strategist. Thank you all, folks, for being on the panel tonight. Good to have you on.
Good to be here.
Let's start off talking about this situation. All right, Dr. Carr, I'm gonna start with you. I remember there was some time ago, Doc, and I might be going over some people's head, but I remember in the 90s, there was a big conversation going into the 2000s, but there was like in the late 90s, there was a big conversation about the browning of America. For years, some have talked about the browning of America. Some say that really started to take place when Barack Obama became a president. Some say that it really, when they put out there that America would look different by, and I think at that time they were talking about 2040. But looking at how this latest data confirms that the white population is on a decline while others of us are on an incline, how should we see this potential growth of power?
Well, I think ultimately the United States will dissolve. It probably won't dissolve in our lifetimes, but certainly the trajectory is toward dissolution. Because we're talking about a race-based settler state where white nationalism, white supremacy has been the foundation for the country. And as a result, the threat of being overwhelmed by non-whites is a running theme in American history. You can look back to the Constitutional Congress, look at Ben Franklin talking about it as early as the late 18th century, and then come forward to the really beginning of the 20th century. Latrobe Stoddard wrote a book called The Rising Tide of Color. This comes in maybe 40 years after the 1885 Chinese Exclusion Act, where they start worrying about the number of non-whites coming into the country. And at that time, non-whites was broad enough to include folks like the Italians, if you can remember. And then, of course, we have the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965, which is the first major piece of federal legislation that tries to close the door, or at least shut the door a little bit, on non-whiteness. So this has been a running theme in American history. Soon, white people will be the largest minority in the country. This country will be majority non-white. That doesn't mean that everybody in the non-white group is going to vote the same way, which brings us to the census. I think that this positive moment we'll have, finally, just to kind of begin this conversation, this positive moment we're going to have is going to end up in the courts. We may look at pay attention to the concept of opportunity districts. The Voting Rights Act, Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act says that if you can determine in a state that quote unquote minority voting power and strength has been diluted, and that is defined by determining whether or not 50% of that district is minority or not, you are under federal law, under the Voting Rights Act, required to create an opportunity district. So folks who are thinking that these white nationalists in the Republican Party can kind of gerrymander their way into permanent minority rule, like a kind of neo-Rhodesia, it's not that simple. And we can talk more about it as we go on, but that's just some opening thoughts.
I appreciate that, Doc. I want to get your take on this as well, Reese. Does this report surprise you? And from a cultural and political vantage point, how do we make sure that the interests of Black people stay at the forefront where our issues aren't lost as the brown community continue to grow?
Well, I mean, you make a good point, Faraji. I think in terms of democratic politics, we're starting to see the kind of shift towards courting Latino voters, and they're not a monolith, just as Black voters are not a monolith. But I think the more important pressing issue that we have is, as Dr. Carr stated, gerrymandering. I'd like to think that there will be some protection in the courts. They have ruled in the favor of, minority rights and minority representation. That is, until now, we have a 6-3 court, which is predominantly conservative and right-wing even. So I think that the census is really important because I think it's going to trigger that much more urgency from the Republican Party to try to get as much of this minority rule enshrined as they can, while they're the majority, and they're going to do the gerrymandering that we've talked about. I wonder, though, if the efforts that the Trump administration took to try to suppress the census turnout actually is part of what's driving this demographic change. There were more pushes in minority communities and with different groups to fill out the census, as opposed to the Republicans, who were very much down on the census, and Donald Trump tried to cut back on the resources for that. And that could be part of it, so it could be a data issue. But there's no doubt that this country is becoming more diverse. And I think that we're going to have more nuanced conversations when it comes to politics, because just because somebody is not Black or not white doesn't mean that they are aligned with us, as, like people like to put us under the umbrella of people of color. It's definitely not that simple. And Black people are going to have to make sure that we exercise our considerable electoral power to keep our interests at the forefront.
Amisha, and speaking of electoral power, now that people are scrambling to redistrict a lot of the areas across the country to meet the fall deadline. Some states have already, passed some of their deadlines, but they're trying to get it in place for the midterm elections coming up next year. My big question is, because we often talk about census data, we look at the data, but how do we make sure that we use this data that's going to garner some real political power, especially for Black political leadership? How can they use this data to gain power, as well as to empower citizens to get more civically involved?
Before I answer that, I'm going to double down on something that Reese said a moment ago. I think that we have to remember, in the context of talking about the census, that those numbers, though they are helpful, we also have to remember that the Black participation in the census was extremely underrepresented. And we can recognize that by the amount of counties and the amount of districts that are actually going to lose, funding for things like hospitals and various other resources that are extremely important, especially to African Americans, because the African American participation in the census was actually quite low. With that being said, I think that we have to look at the fact that the importance of consistently advocating for ourselves, the importance of consistently pushing for advancements in healthcare and healthcare equity, educational equity, housing equity. These are things that we have to do not only in census years, but also in midterm years and off election years, and ensuring that those who are in elected positions and elected capacity have their feet to the fire when it comes to not only promising us things on the campaign trail, but also getting those things done once they're actually in office. I think that one of the most tragic things about policy when it comes to the African American community is that the majority of people who look like those of us on this panel are looking towards the White House for solutions and the White House only and Congress only. We need to re-envision the understanding of state and local government power, because at the end of the day, the effects and the change that matter the most on a daily basis to the Black community specifically are going to be done at the state and local level. You want to see police reforms? Guess what? That happens from the mayor's office, that happens from city council. You can make that happen at your county government level as well. You want to see advancements in how education funding happens? Make sure that you know your state legislative bodies. There are so many things that we can do without a dependency on the Biden administration or Congress. And I think that once our population has a better grasp on how policy is made locally, we will see some things move a bit more swiftly, and we'll see advocacy at the local level. Because again, redistricting is happening, and it's not only happening in red states, it's happening across other states as well. Voter suppression is happening. It's not only happening in the South, it's happening in the North as well. There are so many things that should be not only flash in the pale instances or things that mainstream media focuses on, but also things that we focus on within our own communities. And as someone who is a native of Chicago, when I hear individuals say over and over again, voting rights is not something that matters to us, it's not affecting the state of Illinois, or it's not affecting Chicagoans, I would argue that you are 100% incorrect, because when one of us is hurt, all of us is hurt. And we have to align in fighting with our brothers and sisters across this country. Because as the census points out, and as we see with a lot of the rising people of color numbers, that's not us. Black people are not a large portion of that rising number. Actually, our numbers are dwindling. When it comes to the census specifically, the population that's rising in this country the fastest and has been on that trajectory for nearly 20 years now is the Latinx community. And that shows no signs of stopping. So there's a reason why we see Republicans courting the Latinx community. And to Donald Trump's credit, be it whether it's good or bad, I would argue bad in this case, he actually increased the vote margins for Republicans when it came to the Latinx vote. For Democrats, there's still this consistent push to try to figure out what the Latinx community wants. And again, to back up what Reese said a moment ago, because they are not a monolith, just like Black people are not a monolith, but I would argue that the Latinx community is a little bit different because Black people do vote largely in lockstep in support for the Democratic Party. The Latinx community does not. And I think that because that vote is up for grabs, you're going to see both parties try to kowtow to the needs of the Latinx community. And unless the Black community rises up consistently, we're not going to see those same level of prioritization.
And it brings me to that point that you just brought up, Amisha, around, you know, should there be a greater effort to create a stronger alliance between Black and brown communities because we are seeing that growth from Latino communities, because we're seeing a greater engagement? Would it be in the best interest for Black folks to start to build alliances and political alliances with Latino and Hispanic communities? Reese, I'll start that question off with you.
Absolutely. I think we should align with people on issues, specific issues where there are areas of mutual benefit. And that goes for the Latinx community, that goes for the Asian community, that goes for any community. We have intersectionality because I would remind you that there are Black Latinos with a variety of different demographics. And so we should not be limited to just only thinking that we're all on our own and we need to get something that's only for Black people and nobody else, because that is not going to be a successful strategy. So when you look at areas like COVID, Black and Latino have higher rates of hospitalization and higher rates of mortality. And pretty much every facet of American life and where systemic racism plays, Black and Latino people are both demographics are impacted by these inequities. And so I think the challenge comes in the fact that, you know, there isn't an overall appeal that you can make to all Latinos or Latinx people that would appeal to them just the same as it is when it comes to Black people. But yes, we are not enemies. We can be. We're natural allies. Just when you look at the data, and so I think it's time that we really start to form those partnerships. We have them in a lot of places, so it's not that it's not already happening. But I think we have to look at it as something that's not just a Latino issue or not just a Black issue, but an area of, you know, an issue of, you know, like I said, I know I said don't call us all people of color because we're not all the same, but realistically speaking, we're going to have to start making stronger alliances with people across different spectrums because, as Amisha pointed out, our numbers are dwindling. Last week, we had a discussion about how the fact that 1 in 420 Black people have been killed by COVID. And so the landscape isn't improving fast enough for us, for our mortality or for our health outcomes, for us to take for granted the partnerships that we need to form. But that does not have to be at our expense. I should add that. That does not mean that we have to take a back seat to anybody else's interests. It just means that we need to lock hands with people and different organizations and different demographics that have a shared mutual benefit that we can all benefit from.
Dr. Carr, if we start taking such a big step of strengthening the alliances and really working to connect to the struggle of our brothers and sisters in the Latino community, this could really shake up not just politics. This could shake up economics. This could shake up education. I mean, you know, I kind of think to a moment where Pat Buchanan, you know, he talked about the death of the West. He wrote a book about the death of the West, and then he talked about the suicide of a superpower. But one of the key elements is that he started to see that white power was on the decline. So if we start taking those big, broad steps, I mean, we're fundamentally changing how America operates. Are we ready for that? And do we have the capacity to do that?
I think a great deal of this conversation is reliant on numbers and demographics, and what our experiences have shown us really contradict the assumptions sometimes we make about the nature of what we have to do. First of all, the idea of alliances and political alliances is something that we have shown great strength on over the last century. Remember, African people aren't brought into the electoral process really robustly until the 20th century and really the second half of the 20th century. And the United States isn't a nation. I know we like to call it a nation, but by that I mean there's no common culture as such. There's a lot of myth making, a lot of mythology, but to reinforce something that Amisha said a minute ago in terms of dealing with state and local elections and paying attention, this census data does tell us that about 9% the metro areas in this country grew by 9%, and the top 10 cities in this country in terms of population for the first time in American history all have over 1 million people. New York City, where you see the Spanish-speaking community, the Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, and others, if you look at their voting trends, they're very consistent with people of African descent who speak English, who we call African Americans. To Reese's point, a lot of those people up there, including several members of the Congressional Black Caucus, would be considered Afro-Latinos. Now, that's very different than Texas, but if we're talking about Texas, are we talking about San Antonio? Are we talking about Dallas? Are we talking about Houston? Things begin to dissolve in terms of this data when you start looking very granular. And when you look at the labor coalition, when you look at the 1960s and 70s, whether it be migrant labor, Cesar Chavez and those, that was part of a very important and strong labor movement. But the attacks in this country have been on trying to forestall that coalition, not on us trying to make the coalition. We have sustained it. Look at the Rainbow Coalition work of Jesse Jackson and them. For that matter, come forward to the 1980s and 90s and look at some of this youth energy that built those kind of coalitions. The other thing, last thing I'll say is this, when you see who has lost seats and who's gained seats, so when you see Montana and Oregon and Colorado, New York City, New York losing seats, and then you see, Montana, Oregon, Colorado, North Carolina, and Florida gaining seats, it doesn't mean that that kind of coalition in North Carolina is going to look the same as it does in Florida. And remember, mass white-facing media drives this Florida conversation as if Puerto Ricans in Florida and Cubans in Florida are the same, and a lot of those Cubans in Florida are revenge-minded white Cubans in South Florida, and their own children don't vote with them. So again, it is important to engage in this coalition political building and not to forget that this isn't something we're starting. It's the continuation of something we've been doing for over a century. And that's the thing that these, it's being driven as if we're trying to, do something we haven't been doing. They're working to keep us apart, and they're going to fail.
And that's the interesting part about it, Dr. Carr, because there are still some folks within our community that push back on this idea, that say, oh, no, we can't do, because they take our jobs. I've had conversations about this on my radio show. Folks are like, no, it's not happening. They're taking our jobs. They're doing this and they're doing that. The narrative around the struggle and the plight of the brown, the Latino community is a narrative based upon being a threat to Black progress. And I think that that's something that we really have to have some deeper conversations about to ensure that we can gain the type of power, and like you said, Dr. Carr and Reese, to in the long run, that there is some greater strides that are being made. Amisha, what's your take?
No, I think that that's absolutely correct. And I like Dr. Carr's breakdown specifically of the different demographics that actually come to play when we're talking about the Latinx community, because Florida and Texas are very diverse in their Latinx community, as well as the origins of those Latinx voters, as well as the ages. What is known is that younger Latinx voters tend to be a lot more liberal, a lot more progressive than their parents. It is what it is. With that, I would also argue that this unification that was brought up not only, in this conversation, but also through organizations like the Rainbow Push Coalition. This is something that a lot of civil rights leaders have been working on for a very long time. It hurts me to a certain extent, to a great extent, that we've seen this discussion that started in the conservative, alt-right, stratosphere about basically Latinos taking jobs, that is now kind of broken into the African-American talk speak as well, largely because when white people decide that they want to divide and conquer, they are excellent at the messaging strategies to do so. They have been talking about this for generations now. And at this point, noticing that their own population is dwindling, that they are not going to be the majority, that originally this was predicted to happen in late 2040, possibly 2050. Now we're seeing it expedited. We're looking at 2022, 2025, that you're going to see a lot of these things happen and happen at a more hyper intense rate. I think that the push to talk about and to continue to distance themselves, as well as to push African Americans to distance ourselves from the Latino population, only benefits white people. That is done purposely, because if you were to join these two groups who have largely a lot of the same issues when it comes to education failures, when it comes to failures of our environmental system, when it comes to failures of our hospital system, when it comes to failures in equity, these are things that are shared by both African Americans and those from various Latinx backgrounds. If you were to combine and to join together and to have those conversations and to link up in advocacy and pushing for reforms and change, then that would be one powerful and unstoppable group. And I think that what we're seeing amongst very strategic white people is that in understanding that that is exactly what it is. They do not want that coalition to happen. They have fought very hard to make it never happen. And I think that at this point, it behooves us as African Americans not only to look towards our interests, which again, are shared interests in many cases with various members of the Latinx community, but to also look towards where our leadership is actually going. We see, to Dr. Carr's point, Congressional Black Caucus members who are also Afro-Latino and Congressional Black Caucus members who have linked up with organizations like UNIDOS, who understand the importance of making sure that we carry our Latinx brethren as well, because at the end of the day, a lot of our issues are the very same. When we're talking about public schools, the public school system in America is not driven by white students. 75% of them are brown and black students. That is the system. Our teachers are largely white women. Over 80% are white women. But the student population themselves, schools would not get funded without the black and brown kids that actually attend. We are the public school system. I think that at the end of the day, we have to ensure that we are fighting for those people, because no one else will.
And where does the next generation fit in on this? I mean, because you mentioned, Amisha, that like Dr. Carr and Reese, that there is a shift in attitudes from Latino youth, as well as I would even go as far as to say some even black youth. So where does the next generation fit into this? How do we use this information to empower the next generation?
Well, I think part of that is to move beyond. Right now, we see a lot of activism, hashtag activism. We see activism when it comes to advocacy in the streets. I think that it behooves us, everyone on this panel, as well as those within the listening audience, to teach some of our younger population. I mean, I'm a millennial, but I consider myself old at this point. This next generation is doing some excellent things. We have to teach them how not only to organize in a social media platform or to organize in the streets, but also how to understand policy, also understand the levers of government and how to utilize their voices in that way. Because right now, they've got the internet covered. They've got TikTok covered. They've got the streets covered. But what they don't necessarily always grasp is the policy. And I think that we have to do better, or our schools need to do better, at educating people on how state and local government works, what the levers are there, as well as how Congress actually works. Because our systems are not designed for youth to come up and shake things up. They're not. Mainstream media loves to see young people in the street. What they don't love to see young people doing is actually writing, understanding, and negotiating policy. And once we get our younger generation to that level, they will be unstoppable.
Reese, what's your take on that?
I completely agree with Amisha. I think, what we've seen over and over again, every election, there's going to be a surge of youth turnout, right? Oh, this is the candidate that's going to energize the youth vote, and it's going to be record-breaking. And it doesn't necessarily materialize to the proportion that it could to be exponentially more impactful. And so I think, to Amisha's point, we have to find a way to engage with them into turning protests and activism into political votes. vote. I mean, the reality is that is the mechanism through which change happens in this country on just a mechanical and administrative level. It happens through elected officials. And so I think it's very important to engage on that level. But another point I wanted to bring up was to your point, Faraji, about, you know, some of the divisions that have been sown between the different groups within this country. I think one of the things we've seen, and I have an op-ed out today in the Grio about disinformation campaigns targeting the Black community. It's not specifically on this topic, but one of the things that we've seen is we've seen the pop-up of groups online, particularly Black groups that have very xenophobic attitudes. I won't name check them because I ain't trying to invite the bots and all the craziness, but what I will say is that there are very xenophobic, bigoted groups that are purportedly are presenting themselves as trying to advocate specifically for the Black community, but they're actually encouraging people to not vote. They're encouraging people to, sit out the electoral process, which is by default, obviously not advocating for us, because if we don't vote, we don't have a voice. We are giving our action to somebody else. So, but part of that xenophobic tint is to convince Black people that if it's not happening for us alone, then it's not worth supporting. And we know that's not true. And we know that it's going to be incredibly difficult to ever get anything that is only and specifically for Black people. Just like as people want to name check the Asian American, so-called anti-Asian American hate bill, which was not actually specifically only to Asians. It was something that actually benefits the #1 victims of hate crimes, which are unfortunately Black people. So I think that we have to realize that there are forces, sometimes from within our community, sometimes infiltrating our community, that want to see us divided and try to tackle some of those attitudes, because we do have shared economic interests. As Amisha said, it's going to take, the economic engine is going to change through alliance. And as Dr. Carr, pointed out, this is something we have been working together for. I'd also name check the Poor People's Campaign, the great work that the great Reverend Dr. Barber does to try to get people to see, see on an economic level how we all have shared interests. I'm not a fan of the race, not class argument. That's not the argument that he makes, but I think that's something that we need to realize. We can all come out ahead together on specific issues, and issues where we don't agree. Hey, we got to march to our own drum, the beat of our own drum, and do our own thing. But there are a lot of areas that we need to be linking hands with. But the last thing I'll say is one of the things that I was very angry about was the fact that that VP Kamala Harris was not replaced with the Black woman. And there was arguments that Gavin Newsom made, or that people were making, the Latino vote is significant in California, and, they deserve representation, as if leaving Black women with zero Senate representation was acceptable, and that a Latino senator, a male senator, when there are already several of them in the Senate, is an acceptable substitute for Black women specifically being there. So I do not mean by any means to suggest that other folks being in these roles are a substitute, as we've talked about local and state representation. They're not a substitute for us. They can be allies with us, but we still absolutely need to make sure that we are running for these positions, that we're voting for our candidates. We're not buying into the electability arguments that white is right, and that we're keeping our interests at the forefront.
Dr. Carr, I want to get your final take on that part of, as you're a professor, you're talking to young people, you see the next generation in the spaces. What do you tell them when information like this is put out there? What do you say to empower them?
Ignore white frameworks. That's why I went into Africana studies. You've got to ignore white frameworks. Don't turn that noise down. Turn it off. Turn it absolutely. Turn it off. They do not share our interest if they are still placing whiteness at the center of all of their logics. Understand that they're roughly speaking, this census will note there'll be about 330 million people in the United States right now. That's up 20 million from 10 years ago. So it isn't, the percentage of people of African descent who are seen as people of African descent first hasn't changed, but the numbers have grown, meaning that our population is growing too. It's just not growing in terms of percentage. And note the changes in the census over the last several decades, where they've tried to disaggregate by allowing people to check more than one box. This is, in other words, part of the politics of the census is trying to contain non-whiteness. So if you speak Spanish, you see, Hispanic doesn't mean anything. Understand that if this was a mathematical equation, we would be Anglos, Latinos and Anglos. Those who speak English first are Anglos. Now, does that mean we're black, white? So when you say Latino, you're really not saying anything. But that having been said, listen to young people. You want to look at some young people? Let's look at somebody like Jasmine Camacho Quinn. Jasmine Camacho Quinn won an Olympic gold medal last week for Puerto Rico. Now, some of y'all are saying, wait, I thought Puerto Rico was part of the United States. It is, but the International Olympic Committee allows territories to compete under their own flag. And although she was raised born in Puerto Rico, but raised in South Carolina, and her brother plays linebacker for the Chicago Bears, and if you listen to her, you wouldn't know she's running because her mama is from Puerto Rico and she was born there. Now, here's where it all comes together. There are 435 members of the House of Representatives. They don't want to change that number, which means that as the population shifts and people have babies and people migrate, they're going to take one from here, add it here. California loses one, Texas gains two. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But they have 100 senators. You know why they don't want to let Puerto Rico in, the Virgin Islands in? You know why they don't want Washington, D.C.? Because those seats would look like you and me. So they want to get people fighting over a language when if you look at Jasmine in her face and she never opens her mouth, you're going to put her down in the census as African American. And guess what? She is African American. She's African Caribbean American. Stop listening to white people. That's the rule on this topic. And many others, but since we're talking about this topic, on this topic.
Folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Seek.com, we are partnering with them, of course. We appreciate their support right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Check out a couple of their products that you can take advantage of.
Bon Jovi, you're watching us on SEGREGATES. What's going on in this Quavo Huncho? But right now you in the Huncho's world.
Please let the music play.
Enjoy the Seek.com video by using one of their virtual reality headsets. All you do is just pop your phone right here into the VR headset and enjoy the content. You can also take advantage of their 360-degree headphones. These headphones here come in a couple of colors, black and gold, but then also all gold. And so you can check these out. If you want to use our promo code to get a discount, it's RMVIP21, RMVIP21. Then, of course, a portion of the proceeds comes back to Roland Martin Unfiltered, which allows for us to fund the show. And so this is a black-owned company. We certainly believe in supporting black-owned companies. Mary Spiel is the founder. And so, again, go to Seek.com and use the promo code RMVIP21.